Our conversations today are just going to be about money. First one is about revenues collected by county governments. We'll also talk about the national government. But what do they do with the money? Where does the money go? Our guest is Senator Ledama Olekina, the Senator for Narok County. Happy New Year, Senator.
Happy New Year, Eric.
How you doing?
Doing very well.
You look very well.
Thank you.
Yeah?
I feel good.
Lakini sasa umekuja na rungu kwa studio bwana. Surely.
Una bahati ya leo. Unajua hii ni le tu leadership. Isile kuna this is not the one with the
It's not the one with the
bolt. No, it's not.
Can if somebody were to take it from me and say like, can I look at yours? Would you be able to give it to somebody?
No.
Because I remember my grandfather's stuff.
Yeah.
You couldn't just go and hold it
and touch it.
Yeah. No.
I'm so glad you're so African, so you know the meaning of it.
Yeah.
You see, the problem with Eric is got the name Eric. And he's Masai, he forgets that.
Explain to people the rungu, the importance, the symbolism of what you carry.
Well, you see, it's actually a leadership tool. Mm-hmm. In every community that you go to, if they feel that you've got the charisma, you've got the, what do you call it?
It's called the wherewithal.
Yeah, maybe you can summarize that way. But if God has blessed you enough to be able to lead the nation, lead the people, then of course, by all means, you would be able to be welcome. And everyone who sees you as a leader will always prepare a rungu for you and then give it to you. It's actually very important. I remember during the campaigns, one of the best gifts that I've ever received was from a place called, it's in Kilgoris. And this community really blessed me. And they decided that, you know what, we really love you and we want to give you this, And then from there, I would go to another community, another community, and all of them would definitely give you that. Yes.
It's what the community does to symbolize.
Yes.
This is our leader.
Yes.
Karibu sana to the conversation.
Thank you very much.
To welcome you, CT has the day's proverb. This week's proverbs are from the Republic of Kenya. It's an African country.
Okay.
And the proverbs are in Kiswahili, and we want to bless our guests by asking them to interpret the proverb and tell us what they think.
First, translate it to English.
Yes.
Exactly.
And then interpret it.
Yes.
Adui
aangukapo muinue.
Adui aangukapo muinue. Say it in English.
If your enemy falls down, lift him up. Why would I lift my enemy up? I would crush him. Seriously. I would crush him. The only thing that I would never do is to crush a man when he's down. I'd lift him up. But if he's my enemy, I'll apply the, what do you normally call it? The 10, what? I can't remember the word, but I'll definitely crush him. Yeah.
But if he's down?
If it's a man who is down, for his honor, I will lift him up.
Even if he's an enemy?
That's where he draws the line.
I draw the line there. Because you see, in Masai, we have a saying that says that you would rather lift a calf rather than you lifting a man, a child or a man's, I don't know how you translate it really, because that one will actually come up and crush you.
If you lift the man, he'll come up and crash you at some point. It's better that you lift
a calf.
A calf of a livestock.
Interesting.
So umekataa hii proverb.
Hiyo nimekataa hiyo. Hiyo. That one.
Okay. You are an opposition person. You're opposing everything. Now you even started opposing our proverb this morning.
No.
Resist.
Unajua ningeresist kama umeongea matope. Lakini sasa umeongea. So this time around sita resist.
You respectfully
decline.
Exactly.
Okay. Sawa.
Yeah.
Now, Senator, there have been issues that we've been talking about in terms of, first at the national level, the Kenya Wildlife Service and the ministry in charge have announced an increase in park entry fees.
Yes.
Then we're also seeing that happening with the game reserves. The most, of course, the world-renowned Masai Mara Game Reserve. There have been some moves towards that. But we take a step back and ask ourselves, when we see county governments, such as Narok County Government, collecting money from the Masai Mara Game Reserve, it goes into the county kitty. It is for development of the county. Is it accountable for all the money that it collects?
Let me put it this way and try to demystify the whole process of revenue collection. I think it's important to know that the law, the Constitution, as well as the Public Finance Management Act, clearly define what types of levies that can be collected in counties. And also, it clearly defines on how that money which is collected is treated. If you look at Section 109 of the Public Finance Management Act, it says that all revenue collected shall be deposited in the revenue fund account, except money which is otherwise exempted by an act of parliament or by the Constitution. And in most cases, the biggest problem that we've had is those in power understanding the fiduciary duty, the trust that has been bestowed on them by the public, and that they have a legal obligation to maintain that trust. The biggest challenge we have is one, and I'll try to be very clear, and I'll go back to your first statement, is that when you collect these resources, you need to understand that that money does not belong to you as a person. You're only collecting it because people have trusted you. They have given you the fiduciary duty. They have trusted you to collect that money and spend it to be able to provide services to them, because these are taxpayers' money. One of the biggest problems that we've seen is a lack of accountabilities in counties. And I feel very sad about this, because I sit in the Senate and I push for more money to go to the counties. And I'll still continue pushing for more money to go to the counties so that it can provide medicine to the people. It can also be able to provide good roads. It can provide water to the poor communities. And in most cases, it will also be able to provide bursaries. Right now, children are going to school. In Narok County, there are no bursaries because of mismanagement, So that is where I draw the line. I say, I will raise money, I will push for money. If you collect money, make sure you account for that money properly. We have a problem that trickles down from the national government all the way to the county governments. If you look at the national government budget, even before that budget is implemented, there's a supplementary. Because someone starts thinking, I should have spent this money this way, which is actually wrong. I think the first thing that we ought to do is to make sure that we understand the budget-making process. We go through the budget-making process. There's a budget policy statement. We come up, we go through the division of revenue and all that stuff, and then the budget is made. When you make that budget, it has to be informed by the budget policy statement. But in most cases, if you look at even Treasury, when they come up with the budget policy statement, is a cut and paste of the previous budget policy statement, because legislators do not have the time to read and understand, and also be able to demystify to the people the whole thing of the budget making process. So you'll find counties that will come up and the CC finances will read a blotted budget. And then they will have like 6 or 7 supplementaries, because along the line, they'll realize we have a problem. Either we have a shortfall in revenue collection, or number 2, we, do not value this.
We are changing our priorities midway.
We're changing our priorities midways. And sometimes they even messed up, because the law requires that if you move money from one line item to another, you have to carry out a supplementary budget before the end of the year to be able to correct that. Now, going back to the money which is collected, is it used wisely? It is not. And I'll tell you why. You see, the framers of the Constitution put the control of budget there so that the control of budget can clearly give the authority for money to be released from the exchequer. What the problem is, and I think Senator Okoh Mtata had attempted to explain to the public where the problem was when it comes to the issue of the independence of Treasury, the independence of, county government, the independence of our institutions. The president controls the treasury. He shouldn't control the treasury. The treasury should actually be independent.
body.
So, I agree with Omutata when he talks about us realigning, sort of like, or rethinking the Public Finance Management Act so that we can ensure that we give these agencies their independence. That goes down also to the county levels. If you look at the assemblies depend on the governor so that he can be able to give them money. That is one of the things that I'll say today is that this year we will push for the independence of their county assemblies so that they can be able to have their own treasury, And if treasury in the national government is independent, when the money is released and the controller budget is satisfied that that money has been released and is going to be used for the intended purpose, then by all means, we will have some form of discipline in how the money is spent. What has been happening right now, and I've called off Narok County for this, because what they will do is they will send a cash requisition to the exchequer through the controller budget. It will literally be a cut and paste of the previous requisition. When you look at the folio, there's something called folio B. You will look at, it's like a spreadsheet. They'll say we are requisitioning money to do what? To pay Eric, to pay so and so. But when the money reaches the county government, it is diverted to other people. And that's illegal. And in fact, this year, I will be even going to court.
But how does this happen? You see,
I'll tell you how it happens.
There are institutions that have been in place, just like you've said.
Yes.
Constitutional, there is the controller of budget.
Yes.
There is the auditor general.
Yes.
There's the county assembly, obviously.
Yeah.
Even in the PFM Act, there is the process by which money leaves these two accounts, the county revenue fund and the consolidated account.
Yes.
There is a process that money goes up to the final payment.
Yes.
How can it happen year in, year out, that all these games are played without anybody noticing?
No, it is not that nobody is noticing. People are noticing.
And then?
But here's a problem. And I think this is where I even told the controller budget that she's got the power. If you read the Constitution clearly, the Constitution says that she cannot release money unless she's satisfied that that money is going to be used according to the Constitution. Now, where the problem comes in is the power given to the CC Finance. There are two levels of approval that is required. When the money is requisitioned from the controller budget, there's a line item. So, in fact, the CEO of Finance will write to the controller budget and say we want a credit from this line item.
Yep.
The controller budget will look at the budget and they will see whether the money is there, and they'll say, and they will release based on paying the following expenditures.
Yes.
Now, when the money leaves there, the money goes to IFMIS. The IFMIS director releases the money is in IFMIS. Where the mischief comes in is before the last click of the payment, which is called the internet banking, IB. So at the IFMIS, everything is clear. You showed that we are paying Eric. And Eric is excited, is about to get his money. But where my brother sits is in the bank. Now, all of a sudden, another list of people, is produced for the second authority, because it's got two levels of approval.
Okay.
Approval 1 and approval 2.
Yeah.
And the PFM, or the Public Finance Management Act, places the CC Finance as the head of treasury of the county assembly. So the CC Finances are the most powerful people, and they sort of they topple over their chief officers, because they say, I have these powers. They topple over the chief officers. That's where we need to draw the line. That's where we need to look at and say, this is ridiculous, and we now need to sue both the approvals, those two approvals.
Senator, you're talking about illegalities here.
Yes.
We're not talking about, run-of-the-mill, any kind of office
True,
behavior.
very
We're
true.
talking about illegalities.
Yeah.
And it is clear that it is common practice. It's been happening for some time. But the question is, how come, especially coming from an oversight role, how come we've not seen that any kind of action comes?
That's
this continually happens, action.
That's a very good question. I think the only way that I can explain that is that at the onset, the Senate did not even have any money for oversight. So it was very difficult for the Senate to be able to push. Like Ledama will have to use his money to be able to go and oversight, to go and push it. And then there are these institutions like the DPP, there's this institution like the DCI, the anti-corruption, ESCC. And I want to be very candid here. The problem is that in the Senate, we will put recommendations that prosecute, like investigate and prosecute this person because of this mismanagement of funds. Then, of course, these governors will take all the monies and they will go and they'll pocket this other institution. That's a fact. So now, for us, this year, I have decided that it doesn't matter whether I'm going through the Senate, I will still go to that arm of government that has got the power of mercy, which is the judiciary. Because it is the last point where you get justice. And it is ridiculous for us to be given an opportunity to serve people, yet some people think that they are a gift from heaven to be able to come in and sort of like traverse the whole country with helicopters and use money that belongs to the public. So now we will use all avenues. We will use the Senate, we will use the courts, and we will also go to the public for the public to know how their money is being spent.
So in addition to money being diverted to places where it's not supposed to go, we now, if we're looking at Narok specifically, are seeing a situation whereby there's a suggestion that park fees be raised, right? I've always been an advocate for domestic tourism, to even look at a way in which these prices can come down so that more Kenyans will be able to visit some of these places and you'll be able to rank up your numbers because more Kenyans are going to these spots. But if we're looking at a situation where the prices are going up and we're already saying that money which is supposed to come in has been diverted and gone somewhere else, what are the guarantees that if you even raise these prices, actually going towards things like conservancy, it's going towards upgrades? We can't even be sure of that.
Now, let me put it this way. I'm always against a few institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. I'm always also very clear on defining colonialism and neocolonialism. What is happening in the Masai Mara is coupled with a few factors. Number one, there is an issue of neocolonialism. There is an issue of exclusivity. There is a group of kaburus who are now pocketing the governor and saying, listen, let us make Masai Mara exclusive. So the only way for us to make Masai Mara exclusive is by us increasing park fees to reduce the number of people who are coming in, so that the only people who can come to the Masai Mara are exclusive. There are people who can be able to pay a lot of money. Because it is absolutely ridiculous for you to say, to be able to enter the park. I'll be very honest. Let me just finish. Allow me to finish.
Okay.
Because one thing, Eric, about me is that I will never say anything that I do not have facts on. Because how do you justify? You've got a backpacker. Eric, you and I are middle-class people. We go to the park. You have a family, you're a Masai, so maybe you have 2 wives. You have about whatever, and you happen to live in the States, and you decided, I'm getting what?
Let me take my family back to Kenya.
So I'm going back to Kenya. So when you come back to Kenya, you forgot to get your dual citizenship. So you are coming back as a Kenyan with, you're feeling so generous. So you come in, you have your wife, you have your 4 kids, so you're 6 of you. And then you say, we're going to the Mara for 3 nights. Before you enter the Mara like this, you are told, Eric, for you to enter alone is $280. For your wife is $280. And that is $200. That is $80. You can't afford. Then you say, what do I do? Then you now say, okay, where are these Kenyans who have got camps here? They're all outside the park because they cannot afford. So this middle class man who has really worked so hard, you now decide, I'm just going to camp here. So you camp there, you'll actually be sitting at the periphery watching at the wildlife because you cannot go in. What is happening is that, one, there are few individuals who feel like they want to own the Mara exclusively. So they look for a gullible leader and then they tell him, listen, you raise the parks, these people who do not want to pay, they can go. Forgetting that tickets to the Mara is like buying tickets for a Super Bowl. They are sold through a pre-sale system. The European Union, the laws in the European Union, laws in terms of pre-sale tickets, they're very clear. You cannot increase them more than 8%. But in this case, when you come in without public participation, because what has happened with the issue of Narok is that the governor cherry-picked a few stakeholders, called them to Serena Hotel, and told them this is a Mara management plan. And then at the tail end of the meeting, he tells them, and by the way, folks, we're going to raise the fees, And I'm like, if anyone objecting? And I said, okay, no one is objecting, no one is talking.
Senator, who owns the Mara?
The Mara is owned by the residents of Narok County. In fact, the Masai people owns the Masai Mara. It is not owned by the national government. It is owned by Narok County government.
So if the county government looks at one of its revenue streams and proposes to increase the amount of money that it's raising there, why would you bring in the issue of kaburus and all these other conspiracy
Because it is an issue of public participation. Narok County has got 6 constituencies. It behooves the leadership of Narok County to traverse the entire county of Narok and seek, the residents' opinions. That's number one. Number two, there is a federation of tourists, of tour operators. These are the people who are bringing tourists. Okay?
Yep.
You need to be able to call all of them and seek their opinion. I have no problem with fees going into the Mara being raised gradually. But you cannot wake up all of a sudden from $80 to $280. You really cannot do that. It is ridiculous. And that is the reason why when you, in your first statement, you talked about KWS. The reason why KWS was stopped by the court is because they did not seek public opinion in terms of raising that. And that is why the constitution is there. It is like where people talk about rights. Like yesterday I was in another media house, and a lawyer was talking about rights under Article 33. Eric, your right stops where mine begins. If you are now sort of like interfering with my ability to enjoy my vacation, then of course you are toppling on my rights. So the issue here is this.
The main issue, as I hear you saying, is public participation.
One, public
lack of
participation.
proper consultation.
Number two, it's also very, very important to understand how the tourism sector operates, how tickets are sold. It is not a walk-in. Eric, you will not just decide, I'm going to the Mara today, and you go in. You plan ahead. So you plan 6 months, you plan a year ahead, you buy tickets.
Are you saying I can't wake up tomorrow morning and go to the Mara?
You can, absolutely.
But
however,
people plan their travel.
90% of agents all over the world pre-book, because hotels are sold out. It is like now, let's actually be very, very basic in terms of trying to explain this. If you go into your, let's say, Expedia, and you want to buy a ticket to go to the States, if you buy that ticket 2 weeks, before your travel, it will be cheaper.
Yeah.
If you buy it today,
on the day of travel,
you will probably pay like, an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
So really, it's an issue of understanding how these things happen.
So there is the game reserve, the gazetted game reserve, and then also the conservancies around it.
Yes.
Community conservancies.
Yes.
Now the issue here is with the reserve itself.
The game reserve.
Because the reserve itself is where there's a gate and there's a fence, and you have to pay to enter the game reserve.
You also have to pay to enter the conservancies.
The conservancies, but those are controlled by the conservancies.
The conservancies are controlled by the conservancies, and they're actually doing much better. You'd be surprised that more game is now in the conservancy. I said before we went on the break, I said there's also one other very big problem.
Yeah.
You see, when it comes to leadership and management, you've got to really think about what will make your, your product shine. As a businessman, I love the advertisement you're doing for Kiwi, because you're trying to explain how best you can be able to benefit by using it. Now, when you look at the Masai Mara, we all have competition with the neighboring countries. Serengeti is an example. How much is Serengeti charging? Serengeti is charging a maximum of $80. During the low season, they go down to $60. And Serengeti has got less pets, but actually has got more game, and more people are moving there. There's about 70% cancellation of this season in July. This will be the first year that Narok County will not make money because of sort of like haphazard decision. Number two, the other big problem which I'm referring to is this. Everyone now who is working in the Mara will go to the Mara, buy an acre along the river, and then start working. When you make so much money, you buy tens and tens of thousands of cows. So now an American will pay the $280 that you want him to pay to come. He will come with his family of 5. You know, so you can do the math for me. Then he wants to stay for 3 nights. You charge him, first of all, the 280 times 5 times the number of nights that he's going to stay there. Minimum is normally 3 nights. You know, maybe there's a family of 5. And then now, when they're going on the game drive, guess what? The thing that they see are thousands of cows. Why the hell did I travel all the way from America to come and see thousands of cows? So there's mismanagement.
You're talking about $21,000
yes,
for a family for 3 nights.
For 3 nights. Just to get,
And
just
this
to
is
enter.
park
That's just
entry
park fee.
Yeah.
It's not accommodation.
You know,
it's not game drive.
It is not game drive.
It is not travel to
it is not
into
whatever.
Mara.
It is just park fees to enter, which is absolutely ridiculous. And you know, the problem also is this. Not all that money goes to the county coffers.
Where does it go?
That money, like I'll give you a very good example. During the Christmas season, the CC Finance of Narok walked into the park. He was doing random checks. Then he goes in, and then he finds a park administrator. The park admin, you know, he finds the vehicles, and he says, "Can I see your tickets?" So the guys were like, "Oh, can you talk to the chief park administrator?" So he goes in and he says, "Hey, you know, where are the tickets for that vehicle?" He says, "Oh, hold on a minute." So the guy calls the governor. He doesn't get the governor. He gets the brother of the governor, because he seems to be now the de facto governor.
Right.
And then he tells him, "Tell him you don't report to him, you report directly to the governor." So it is not right. Whatever is happening is actually not right, because not all the money. Because let me tell you, Eric, when you go to Narok County in July, August, September, and October, and you go to the Masai Mara, you will not get accommodation.
Yep.
And how many beds are in Narok County, in Masai Mara? There are 5,332 beds.
That's within the reserve and the conservancies.
Inside the reserve.
Only
inside
the reserve.
You know, there are 117 camps. 117 camps, you know, along the cap, whatever. And then there are 46 tented camps inside and lodges. So if you add all those people, you count how much money. So let's say $280 multiplied by 5,332 beds. Narok County would be collecting more money than
it's one of the wealthiest counties.
You know, than the treasury, really. If you think about it.
No.
So where is that money? How come that money is not there? So the problem is this.
So you tell us, where's the money?
If you are asking me, I'll ask the governor. I'm following it up. Trust me. I'm following up all that money. But the problem is this. The problem is this, and I want to be very, very clear. One, you cannot just wake up, you know, without consulting, proper consultation, and decides to increase revenue 300%. And then, the other very big problem, for the last, how many years has the Masai Mara been in existence? For the last 60 years, we have always been operating on a 24-hour ticket. 24-hour ticket. Now, you are told, no, you will not only pay $280, but you will only stay in the Mara for 12 hours. So if you leave Nairobi now by car, you're going to Narok, you get to the escarpment, you stay there for 6 hours because of the traffic, you know, and then you get to the park at 5 p.m. 5 p.m. You don't even get to go to your room. You're tired.
It expires
you have
in an hour.
1 hour, literally 1 hour, for you to be able to do what? To do your game viewing and go to your room. The next morning,
Pay.
let me tell you what happened the next morning. If you are not staying in the Mara for 2 days, the next morning, you've got until 11 a.m., no morning game drive, to exit the park. If you're flown into the Mara, and let's say you go to the Mara at around 5 p.m., so you've got 1 hour. You've got to stay in your hotel room. That's the rule. You stay in your hotel room until 10:30 a.m., and then you drive half an hour to the airstrip for you to leave. What sort of dictatorship is that?
So what informs all these decisions?
It's one, ill-advised, you know, this thinking or this, you know, allowing power to consume you. And then number two, and I say this,
But that is like shooting yourself in the foot.
Exactly.
Look, as the boss of a county executive, you know that this is one of your great cash cows, right? To finance your own source revenue.
Yes.
Is just fees from the Masai Mara Game Reserve and around there, you know very well that this is how I can finance my budget. So you know very well that if I do something that is detrimental to this, it'll affect not only how I'm able to govern, but also the promises that I made to the people. Why would somebody make such a decision?
I think it's
I fail to
I think
see-
it's exactly, and I also fail to understand. But I think it's an issue of being ill-advised. Number one, there's also an issue of not caring about the people around you. Because what I would expect Governor Ndutu to do is, number one, have a clear public participation forum where you sit down and you take the views of your stakeholders. In fact, the Federation of Tourism, the Kenya Tourism Federation, is very important because they are the people who will decide we're either bringing you the tourist or we are taking them to the Serengeti. Nothing stopped them from taking them to the Serengeti. And they are doing that. They're actually doing that. So for me, as a person who is tasked with the constitutional responsibility of protecting the counties, I am doing my job by making sure that, number one, I also move to court, just like the Federation of Tourists have moved to court, to stop this because it is going to do three things. One, there'll be massive job losses. Because if tourists cannot come, those camps will not be able to do what? To employ people. Yeah. There are camps inside the park. There are around 46 camps sites inside the park. You know, even the way those camps were allocated to those individuals, it's questionable. But I'm not going to deal with that right now. I'm going to deal with the issue of really the practicality of these things. Number two, the $80 bed night fee that you are now imposing on these people, you do not have a clear policy on how you're going to spend that money. We have something called the 19% community fund, where it's a fund which was established many years ago that really intended that 19% of all the revenue collected from the park will be put into this fund to compensate the Masais who are killed by wild animals, maybe support that community, go to school. It was never done. It was never done. So if you are telling me that now the $80 that you're charging, the $40 will go to the camp owner, the $40 will go to that community fund, pass it through legislative process, have a clear legislative framework on how that money is going to be spent, so that tomorrow, when the auditors come, I will not feel embarrassed as a senator of Narok trying to defend my county when you have spent money you're not supposed to spend wrongly. There is also the biggest problem of not caring about, one, the camp owners, because they're the ones who are bringing you the business. So in my view, what the governor ought to do is, number one, instead of going through a heavy court battle in court, because it will happen there, it will go all the way to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, he will lose. Instead of doing that, because he will lose either in two ways. One, if the judiciary decides, Governor, you're right for raising the fees, guess what the tour operators will do? They'll say, hey, fair enough. We'll go to South Africa. We'll go to the Serengeti. To go to Kruger National Park, I think it's $20.
They'll come to Amboseli.
They will go to Amboseli.
We'll be fine.
They will go to Amboseli. They will go to Amboseli. So really, for me, I'm not just whining, but I'm just saying, the governor, Patrick Ndutu, you need to think.
Listen to the
Seriously,
people.
You need to listen to the people.
Mheshimiwa, there is a Wildlife Conservation and Management Act.
Yes.
2013. Everything you're saying, it lays down quite clearly. One of the things that must happen, you're talking about a wildlife endowment fund and a compensation scheme. It is in the Constitution. It is not a suggestion. It is not something that you're supposed to do when you like, or if you don't, you must. So, meaning if it isn't there, then someone is in contravention of
that act.
Precisely. Absolutely. And then there's this little thing when it comes to revenue.
I'm glad you just raised that, because then that will be meat or fodder for my case as well. Yeah.
Yes. There's something called the equitable sharing of whatever resources that accrue. Now, in the absence of certain structures that are put in place to ensure, because you're talking about funds, the money comes in. Everything in the Mara belongs to the people. It's not complicated.
Absolutely.
It's not complicated. That's where the term equitable comes in. How then do you know? And it can't be equitable if you haven't consulted the communities to understand what their needs are, so that it can be the funds can be allocated to meet those needs. So if you're saying indeed that the governor isn't conducting public participation, then the question you ask is, okay, first of all, how much money is being raised? And when this money is being raised, some money trickles down to the community. What is it? How is it that it is conducted? And is there a deficit? And if that is a deficit, is it a deficit that is mentioned and brought about by the community to say, look, this is what we wanted and this is what we've gotten? Because what the county government is instituted to do is to provide, in the name of development, processes that will benefit the people. Now, when you, as the county of Narok, have one resource that other people would salivate and wish and die for, because if you're talking about your own source revenue,
yes,
there are very few counties that have serious own source revenue,
yes,
like the county of Narok.
Yes.
So many questions abound.
Now let me just tell you what I'm about to do. I will institute an accountability mechanism that has never been seen in this country. Number one, I will use my position as a senator and my platform in the Senate, first of all, to summon all hotel operators in the Mara, for them to provide me with a clear audit of all the tourists who have spent a night, if it is one night, if it is 3 nights, in their camps. I will compare that apple to apple with the money that the county government is saying that they have collected. I will also knock on KRA and I will say, gentlemen, it is about time that we all work together to ensure accountability of the money which is collected in the park. By doing that, it will then it will force that discipline to be able to come in. Then we will now talk about the equitable sharing of that resource. We will talk about what the Environmental Act says in terms of that compensating that community. Because we will be very clear. I will never have to come here and look at Eric in the eye and say, Eric, although we are collecting 5 billion, we are only reporting 2 billion. We will now require, even if this calls for a motion, even if this calls for legislation, I'm prepared to do that. We will now require a very clear process of understanding how many tourists have gone to the Mara. If you have flown into the Mara, we don't need to have your name because we have to deal with the issue of data protection. Even if it's a number, we'll have a number. Okay? If you enter the park like this, we'll have a number. At the end of the month, we will calculate how many people have entered into those hotels. We will take the data from the hotels, we'll take the data from the revenue collectors, and we will compare apples to apples. Because if you think about it, KRA has a stake in this, a very big stake for national government. Because if Eric comes to the Mara today, you will pay your park entry fee that will go to the Narok County. You will go to the hotel, you'll have a beer or two, you'll have your accommodation. KRA has a stake there. So by knowing how many people have spent a night in, let's say, for instance, Mara Plains Camp, which is owned by one of the Kaburus, who are trying to seek for exclusivity, we will say if you have like 50 guests who have stayed there, how much did you charge them? Those 50 must be reflected in the same database of the Narok County's revenue collection.
Senator, before we run out of time, there's something I want to ask. Among people who call themselves conservationists, who believe in conserving wildlife resources, now wildlife doesn't just refer to the animals, but the ecosystem within which they exist. There's the balance that is always talked about within the ecosystem. And when you talk about, say, hotels, camps, there is always that story of the pressure that is brought to bear in the relationships that then animals, the ecosystem, and how that is balanced. So when people talk about exclusivity, whether they talk about it, whether they talk about it, what really is their claim? Are they saying that, are they fighting for preserving the ecosystem of the Mara?
Absolutely not.
Or
absolutely, they are lining their own pockets.
Do they just want to keep other people out?
They want to keep other people out. First of all, there are two things. Number one, if you raise the $80 bed night fee, you are making the camps outside the reserve more attractive because there's no $80 park fee, $80 bed night fee. Now, if you raise the park entry fee to $200, you are even limiting those camps which are outside the Mara from being able to bring in guests to go into the Mara. So ultimately, there are always things we call intended and unintended consequences. Maybe the intended consequences was to limit the people who go into the Mara and maybe just bring in, sort of like, quote unquote, the finest of the finest or whatever you want to call them to enter in, and they pay top dollars to come in. Now, if they are coming in and they are paying top dollars and everything, you'll probably get that money. It will not flow constantly. You know very well, and I want to end by saying this. You know very well that every Kenyan wears a pair of shoes. Senator Ledama Olekina is wearing a black shoe today. Okay? I will have to go to the shop to buy kiwi to polish. Okay? If kiwi was being sold to me at 1,000 shillings, it is only a few of us who will afford to do what?
To buy the kiwi.
To buy. But if you go to to the slums, if you go anywhere, even to the rural areas, you'll find somebody with a pair of shoes, and he will be able to buy it and polish his shoes, and they'll look good. So you really have to be balanced. You have to ask yourself, how can I balance? How can I make those camps which are inside the park attractive? How can I make the camps which are outside the park attractive?
Just as attractive.
And how do I ensure a fiduciary duty? It's a legal obligation.
I have a concern as we conclude, Senator. What you've talked about, what you want to do next, trying to seek to clearly understand the amount of money that is raised by the county government of Narok at the game reserve. And I'm just thinking, this is not a new thing to Narok.
It is not.
Narok has been managing and governing this park.
It is not.
Even before devolution.
It is not.
The Narok County Council was running the park. So to tell me that they don't have, as something that you can see as a senator for Narok County, an accountability mechanism that shows you this is actually how much money we raise from Narok County government, I think you should not even be doing this work yourself. You should be seeking a way of...
No. Let me clarify that. We do have. However, as time goes by, we become greedier.
And
okay? We now want to drive a Rolls Royals. So you'll devise mechanism to divert those monies, to find mechanism whereby if there are 10 vehicles coming, you create a cabal.
You register less.
So you register less. So the system is there. But there's a check and balance system. Just like the framers of the Constitution.
Is the system okay or is the system compromised?
I would probably say, to be very, very honest, I think CAPS, which has been collecting revenue on behalf of the Narok County, has got a very good system that works. I think Mara Conservancy, which is managing, has got a very good system that works. I think any revenue collection company that comes in, develop a very good system. But these systems are manipulated. This system are manipulated as follows. One, you either do not issue a ticket and you allow people to be able to go in, and you make sure that you have the human interface to be able to control for when they are being checked. Or, finally, you just fold and say, the park is free for everybody.
Senator, come again soon. Let's continue this conversation.
Thank you very much.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.